dynamic? And if so, how?
Yes, they shook up everyone's worlds, I feel like, which is crazy that, like, I think more so Lindsay than Carl, because I think everyone is very friendly with Carl and maybe are in whatever type of situation with Lindsay. But yeah, like, it's crazy how, like, one person's arrival can really make everyone start talking.
Is that really how it felt? Because that's how it kind of felt like as a viewer. But is that like what, like Lindsay came and then all the whole, like the atmosphere changed?
Yeah, I mean, everyone was just kind of like talking, chattering behind each other's backs and stuff. And I'm like, and here I am being like, what's going on? Like, what happened? Like, I had no idea. So, like, I'm always like, I feel really nosy, but I was like, what? Huh?
Is that just your nice way of saying that Amanda and Paige and Ciara were talking behind Lindsay's back?
I wouldn't say like talking as in gossiping. I think just like, I mean, if we all know who really started the rumor mill or whether it was a rumor or not, but I think they were just like talking over what was said or what actually happened.
I mean, so there's a lot that happened, I think, when Lindsay and Carl came. Like, I guess let's divide it into two categories for a minute.
Okay.
First off, there was this whole thing with Jason where, I mean, look, the world knows that, she became pregnant and had a miscarriage. And I mean, there was this tension. Like, did you feel that tension in the house? And like, did you really know what was going on between like Jason and Lindsay? And were you really aware of all of this?
I had asked some of the girls like what exactly happened last winter, and then I was treading lightly with Jason because I know that's like super personal and I didn't want to be like invasive to like a situation that like he was already kind of anticipating. So I did know what happened, but like I didn't know like how he felt and like why he was feeling the way he did. But I knew there was like some like apprehension of like talking to me or like starting anything with me with her coming.
And what about, because it still seems to be playing out now, like in real time of, look, I had Jason on this podcast and we talked about it. I think that's the podcast Lindsay's referring to. But I mean, that's a whole nother story. But I mean, where do you fall, on this whole, really on it? You know what I mean? Like, she's upset that he spoke out on it. He's upset that he feels that she mentioned it on Summer House and he wasn't like aware of that. I don't know. There's a lot going on.
Oh, I totally knew you were going to ask me this, and I was like, oh, damn it, here it comes. I will try to stay a little neutral here because as a woman, I feel for Lindsay completely and entirely. But like knowing Jason, I also feel for him and like his point of view and how his feelings might have been hurt. At the end of the day, like he did know what was happening. And, like, it's not Lindsay's fault that, like, certain publications wanted her opinion on it. Like, you cannot control that. It's not her fault. Like, she talked about it, and, of course, people are going to ask her opinion on it, and it's not her fault that people didn't want to hear Jason's. If he wanted to talk about it, he could have maybe, like, reached out and gotten his word out there. But I also think Lindsay lives a more public life than him, so he isn't as vocal about his feelings and whatnot. I think though that he should have gotten a little more of a heads up that that episode was going to air, because I think he was only given like a mere few minutes. When I think they could have given him maybe like a day or two. Like I'll go as far as that, but I don't think what Lindsay did was wrong at all by sharing her story. She 100% had every right to do so.
Right. I guess, I mean, that's what she's saying. Like, look, it's my story. It's my body. Like, you can't shame me for wanting to. And she is being asked about this.
I mean, she's the most, like, outspoken person in a good way. Like, she's so vulnerable to the world with what's happening to her, what has happened. And with Jason, I feel like for someone who is so meticulous and careful with his words, I think he might have fumbled that conversation a little bit because it just sounded like he wanted press, which maybe he did, maybe he does. But I think he chose his words a little incorrectly. But I think we all know his intentions were true.
Right. Yes, and I think Lindsay has accused him of just wanting press. I think that was part of it. And what is it, like you said, like Lindsay is very outspoken, and I mean, a lot of us are, right? Like,
Yeah.
What is it about her that you feel does then change the dynamic of the house? And like, there's, people are talking and like, like Amanda has said recently, like on Watch What Happens, Lindsay's maybe not she's the rudest to fans, and Paige is like, oh yeah, like why do these girls have such a problem with Lindsay?
I haven't firsthand like experienced any like of her supposed wrath if she has some. Like I talked to her in the summer and like like heard her out, and like I think she's honestly like really amazing and strong. Like she's such a strong woman. I just think she's unapologetically herself, and that's not easy to do. And sometimes I don't think she holds back. And whereas I think sometimes she doesn't hold back and isn't afraid of like maybe the reactions that people might give her, whereas the other girls do hold back a little bit more, and maybe that's why Lindsay just doesn't care what people think of her.
That makes sense.
And we could all maybe be more like that, and it is very much like take me or leave me.
Yeah, and I don't even think that's such a bad thing, right?
No, it's not. But like not everyone is like that, but sometimes we do wish we could care less about what people think of us, and I don't think Lindsay cares if people like her or they don't. And I wish I could be like that too, but
I would agree with that. Now, what about this other whole situation, where Austen is bringing up, so I guess to boil it down, Carl and Lindsay, I guess that's when they started at the wedding that you were at. That's when they started realizing, hey, we've been there before, but this, I'm starting to develop feelings. And now, Austen saying like Lindsay crawled into his bed and touched his dick and all this other stuff. I mean, how do you feel about this situation? Like, is anyone in the wrong? Who's in the wrong?
Oh God, I mean, like I rewatched that episode back and kind of heard like what people were saying, and like my interpretation before I watched it, like being there, was that like Carl and Lindsay decided that they're like gonna try, right? And like that early stages before you actually get into the relationship, so whatever, October was when they started dating. I don't know. It's like I know their timeline of the relationship. Thank you, world. But yeah, I think like the moments before you start dating, that's when you build trust, and you're like, that's when you kind of like stop seeing people, you start filtering it out, and you build trust in order to get into a relationship. And I think that's why everyone was like harping on it so much, because like the day you decide like I like you, we're gonna try, we're not in a relationship yet, but like that's when you kind of start, I guess, behaving differently, or doing things you wouldn't want the other person to do to you. So I think that's what people were like, or like the girls and the guys in the house were kind of upset about. But I mean, like, hey, if Carl's okay with it, if Carl knows and he's okay with it, then why do you guys care so much?
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, I really didn't understand it. That's just me personally. I was like, but you never really had it's like the first time after a year, 2 years, 3 years, however long, and you never had a conversation that we're now exclusive. So this isn't, how is this not okay?
I don't know. Talking about it now, I'm like, I'm confused all over again. Like, what actually happened? And I think the only people that will ever really know that will be Lindsay and Austen.
And do you think, regardless of what happened, do you think Austen handled it wrong?
I think when he like talked about it to the girls, and I think Craig was there, he was just more so like expressing his uncomfortableness about it that exploded into like a huge shitstorm. I think he was just like nervous of her coming and being uncomfortable and awkward around Carl, and like maybe he was afraid of like sabotaging their relationship. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, I don't think he was trying to like stir the pot entirely. I think he was just more like freaked out.
But you could argue